This is my road. I'll drive when I damn please. You hear me? Ah! Open this damn gate!
She was cutting an apple when she said it, easy as if talking about the weather. Her eyes never met mine, just that smug curl at her lips as she leaned on the counter, knife tapping on the board. Go ahead, move out, she tossed over her shoulder like she was granting me leave from her throne. No fight, no fuss, just the cold finality of someone who'd already written me off. The knife struck the board one last time. She slid a slice into her mouth, chewing slow, savoring her nerve. I didn't give her the scene she wanted. No shouting, no begging, no smart remark to make her roll her eyes. I let the silence sit until she glanced up, waiting. When nothing came, her smirk twitched. I walked past her without a word, brushing my hand on the bedroom door frame like wiping her off me. I pulled out my old duffel bag, the same one from when I first moved in, when I was still good enough for her family. As I folded shirts, my reflection in the dresser mirror stared back. Not mad, not sad, just measuring. From the kitchen, her voice carried. Meant for her, not me. You've been miserable here anyway, you'll be fine. Or maybe not. The little laugh at the end cut deeper than cruelty. Her father's words echoed in my head. Last Thanksgiving, drunk and leaning close, he said, "You're lucky to be here, son. My daughter could do better." I'd swallowed it then. Now I saw she'd bought in whole. The more I packed, the quieter she grew. She hadn't expected me to yield so quick. In her mind, I was supposed to fight, prove I cared enough to stay. But I wasn't playing her script. This wasn't loss. It was a door. I zipped the bag, grabbed my jacket. She looked up from her phone when I passed back through the kitchen, eyebrows lifting in fake surprise. "You're actually going?" I met her eyes for the first time that morning. "You told me to." My voice was flat, almost bored. She thought she'd erased me from her picture. What she didn't see was that I'd stepped off her board, taking my pieces with me. Outside, my boots ground the gravel of the path to my truck. That road had history. So did I. And in my back pocket was a paper no one in that house had remembered in years. A paper with my name and a clause that could flip the game. She thought move out meant vanish. To me, it meant move smart. She'd shoved me into the one spot she feared most. Outside her walls, holding the keys to her gates. The apartment was bare. Just a bed, table, and chair. But the steel file cabinet in the corner was older than the walls around it. I'd bought it at an estate sale years ago, its weight perfect for the kind of papers you only open when the world is about to shift. That night, with one lamp throwing long shadows across the cracked paint, I slid the bottom drawer open. The metal scrape broke the silence. The smell hit first old paper and dust, the kind of scent that clings to things locked away too long. Inside were rolled maps with torn edges, deed copies stamped in fading ink, and contracts held by rusted clips. I unrolled the biggest map, pressing the corners down with a mug and my pocket knife. It was the county survey of her family's land. Fence lines, creeks, and most important, the narrow gravel road that cut through my old lot before reaching theirs. To most, it was just a road. To me, it was the only artery keeping their farm alive. My hands found the easement agreement, folded and yellowed. The signatures were still bold, her father's in thick pen, mine in block letters beneath, the county seal in the corner. The date glared back, 10 years ago, when they needed that road fixed and couldn't pay for it. I had stepped in, covered every dime, but only under one rule. The rights to that road were mine. Not shared, not rented. Mine. Over the years, they forgot. Her father strutted at county fairs, bragging how no one could touch our land as if it were untouchable. They ignored that the bubble had a valve and I was the one who could close it. I leaned back, the paper heavy under my palms. This wasn't just leverage. It was a weapon, waiting for the right pull. And today she had pulled it without knowing. Bitterness curled in me, but sharper than that was calculation. She thought moving out meant I was done. She didn't know a part of her world still belonged to me, the part they couldn't survive without. I hadn't spoken to Evan in 7 years, not since a friend's wedding. He was the type who could smell a deal the way sharks smell blood. While I stuck to steady work, he gambled on real estate and won big. Last I'd heard, he controlled half the new parks and housing sprouting in the county. At my small kitchen table, the easement lay flat before me. My phone in hand, thumb over his name. This wasn't a call you made light. Once I opened this door, there was no shutting it. Then I saw her again, leaning on that counter, smirking as she told me to go ahead, move out, like I was trash. My thumb pressed call. Evan answered on the third ring. His voice the same as always, smooth, cocky, like he'd already won. Well, I was just thinking about you the other day. He lied with ease. What's got you calling after all this time? I've got something, I said, my tone steady. Something that'll make you rich and make certain people very miserable. His voice sharpened at once. Go on. I told him about the road. Not the whole tale, just what mattered to him. Privately owned. Only legal way into a big stretch of farmland. A perfect tool for pressure, bound by an agreement with no end date. He went quiet, and I could hear him thinking on the other end. You're saying this road is their only way in or out? Exactly. And I own it outright until I say different. He gave a low whistle. That's something. Very interesting. What do you want done with it? I want it sold to someone who'll use it right and keep it quiet. The less noise before it's sealed, the better. There was a pause, then the faint creak of him leaning back. I knew that sound from poker in college. It meant he was all in, but already plotting how to make the prize bigger. I can do that. I've got an LLC. We'll push it through clean transfer done, no one the wiser, but, once it's mine, I'll get creative with it. That's the point. He laughed, the kind of laugh that never ends well for someone else. All right, send me the details. We'll move quick. 3 days later, the first ripple hit. A feed delivery truck, one of those long-haul rigs stacked with grain pallets, rolled up the gravel road toward the farm, same as it had every other week for years. But this time, it didn't make it past the tree line. A brand new steel gate blocked the path, the kind you'd see guarding an industrial yard, not a country lane. There was a small booth beside it, manned by a stocky guard in a dark jacket, clipboard in hand. The driver leaned out his window. Gates closed. What's going on? The guard flipped a page on his clipboard. New ownership, private road now, toll fees due before entry. The driver laughed, thinking it was a joke. Yeah, right, let me through, I've got a schedule to keep. No fee, no entry, the guard said flatly, stepping closer. Your company should have been notified. It took all of 10 minutes for the call to reach the farmhouse. Her father, already suspicious whenever anything disrupted his routine, stormed out the door, coat half on, muttering curses. He drove down to the gate himself, dust kicking up behind his truck. You can't block this road. This is our land, he barked before the guard could even greet him. The guard didn't flinch. Sir, the road is now privately owned by Redline Development, LLC. You'll need to speak with them about ongoing access. The county records were updated last week. Her father's voice rose. County records? This road's been in our family for generations. The guard's eyes stayed on his clipboard. Not according to the easement agreement on file. I'm just here to enforce what's already signed. That was the first moment, just a flicker, where his confidence cracked. He drove straight to his office in town and called the county clerk, demanding they fix the mistake. The clerk's answer was polite but final. The transaction was legitimate, recorded, and irreversible without the consent of the current owner, Redline Development. 3 days later, the first ripple hit. A feed delivery truck, one of those long-haul rigs stacked with grain pallets, rolled up the gravel road toward the farm, same as it had every other week for years. But this time, it didn't make it past the tree line. A brand new steel gate blocked the path, the kind you'd see guarding an industrial yard, not a country lane. There was a small booth beside it, manned by a stocky guard in a dark jacket, clipboard in hand. The driver leaned out his window. Gates closed. What's going on? The guard flipped a page on his clipboard. New ownership, private road now, toll fees due before entry. The driver laughed, thinking it was a joke. Yeah, right, let me through. I've got a schedule to keep. No fee, no entry, the guard said flatly, stepping closer. Your company should have been notified. It took all of 10 minutes for the call to reach the farmhouse. Her father, already suspicious whenever anything disrupted his routine, stormed out the door, coat half on, muttering curses. He drove down to the gate himself, dust kicking up behind his truck. You can't block this road. This is our land, he barked before the guard could even greet him. The guard didn't flinch. Sir, the road is now privately owned by Redline Development, LLC. You'll need to speak with them about ongoing access. The county records were updated last week. Her father's voice rose. County records? This road's been in our family for generations. The guard's eyes stayed on his clipboard. Not according to the easement agreement on file. I'm just here to enforce what's already signed. That was the first moment, just a flicker, where his confidence cracked. He drove straight to his office in town and called the county clerk, demanding they fix the mistake. The clerk's answer was polite but final. The transaction was legitimate, recorded, and irreversible, without the consent of the current owner, Redline Development. By that afternoon, the truck was still parked on the side of the road, driver leaning against the hood, smoking while he waited for instructions. The farmhands started whispering about what it meant. A few of them remembered my name being on old paperwork. Most didn't connect the dots yet. Back at the farmhouse, she stood in the doorway, watching her father pace. She wasn't worried. Not yet. She figured it was some kind of bureaucratic mix-up, one phone call away from being undone. But he knew better, even if he didn't say it out loud. He dealt with developers before. Developers didn't buy something unless they planned to squeeze every drop of value from it. By the next morning, the unease had calcified into something harder. Her father summoned everyone to the farmhouse dining room. Siblings, spouses, even the cousin who only ever showed up when he smelled free food. The long oak table was covered in papers, printouts from the county registry, photographs of the new gate, and a copy of the toll schedule Red Line Development had sent over by courier. He didn't waste time on small talk. "This is extortion!" he barked, slamming his palm against the table so hard a coffee cup rattled. "No outsider is going to choke us off from our own land." The family lawyer, a man who'd been on their payroll for decades, sat quietly at the far end of the table. When her father finally turned to him, demanding options, the lawyer cleared his throat and slid a folder across. Inside was a photocopy of the easement contract, the county seal bright as the day it had been filed. "This is the problem," the lawyer said evenly. "It's not a mistake, and it's not extortion. This is perfectly legal. Whoever sold this had every right to do so. The buyer now owns full control of the road." Her father's voice boomed. "So we sue. We'll drag them into court until they beg to sell it back." The lawyer didn't even look up. "You'll lose. The language is airtight. It was signed willingly, and it has no expiration clause. Your only realistic option is to negotiate, which, judging from this toll schedule, won't be cheap." The schedule was brutal. A flat fee for every vehicle entering or leaving, plus maintenance surcharges that spiked during harvest months. Her sister-in-law whispered the math under her breath, numbers that over a season could eat their profits alive. She sat near the window, arms crossed, eyes darting between the papers and her father. She still didn't say my name, but I could see it in her face. She was starting to wonder. And that was fine. Wondering meant the seed had been planted. It was almost midnight when the knock came. Not the casual tap of a neighbor or the rhythmic pound of a delivery. This was sharp, insistent, urgent. I already knew who it was before I even reached the door. She stood in the hallway under the dim yellow light, hair pulled back in a messy knot, coat thrown over her pajamas. Her eyes were wide, not from surprise, but from the kind of restless anger that burns hotter the more it's contained. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped forward until she was inches from me, her breath quick in the cold air. "You did this." Her voice wasn't a question. It was an accusation, a verdict she'd already passed. I leaned on the door frame, letting the silence stretch. Her gaze darted over my face, looking for the smallest twitch of guilt, some sign that she'd caught me red-handed. I gave her nothing. When I finally spoke, my tone was almost conversational. "You told me to move out." I let the words settle, then added, "I just moved my property." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe even understanding, but it was quickly drowned in anger. "You're going to ruin everything," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my family?" I almost laughed at my family. Not our family. Not once had she used that word for me in months, and now she expected it to sting. She switched tactics, her voice softening, lips trembling in a performance she'd perfected over the years. "This doesn't have to be like this. We can talk, we can work something out. Just you and me." I watched her, almost curious to see if she'd dig any deeper into the act. When she realized the softness wasn't landing, she snapped back into fury. "You're pathetic. This is petty. You're going to regret it." Her words hit the air and fell flat. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply stepped back and put my hand on the edge of the door. "Good night." Her face tightened, a mix of disbelief and frustration as the door began to swing shut. She didn't step forward to stop it. She just stood there, breathing hard, until the latch clicked and the world on my side went quiet again. She had come here expecting to bargain, threaten, or shame me into undoing what was already set in motion. Instead, she'd walked away with the confirmation she feared most. I wasn't bluffing. By the second week, the rhythm of the farm had changed. Not in the way seasons change, but in the way a machine grinds to a halt when someone pulls a crucial gear. The feed trucks stopped coming first. The drivers refused to pay the tolls. And the companies they worked for didn't see the profit in fighting a legal battle over a single client. Without feed, the livestock thinned. Without deliveries, schedules fell apart. By the third week, the produce buyers started pulling out of their contracts. A couple of them cited logistical difficulties. But everyone knew the truth. No one wanted to pay inflated transportation fees just to cross a strip of gravel. The crops that had been their pride, rows of vegetables and grain meant for market, began to wither. The smell of rot carried on the wind, faint at first, then unavoidable. Her father went to the bank twice in 1 week, hat in hand, trying to restructure loans. The bank had listened politely, then suggested the unthinkable, mortgaging the farmhouse. They did it, and even that was just to keep the lights on and pay the bare minimum of the toll fees, hoping to limp through until some miracle loosened the noose. But Evan had no intention of loosening anything. In fact, he tightened it. At the start of the 4th week, Redline Development sent a new schedule, toll rates raised by 20%, with an additional seasonal surcharge that just happened to coincide with their harvest window. Her father's fury was legendary, but fury doesn't move trucks down a road they can't afford to use. Every day the gate stayed shut was another day the farm bled money. And bleeding money is a slow, humiliating end for people who've spent their whole lives believing their name alone kept them untouchable. I drove past the property once, not close enough to be seen, but close enough to see the fields, the half-loaded trailers sitting idle, the stacks of crates that would never see a market. I didn't feel a rush of triumph. What I felt was colder, steadier, satisfaction measured in the way a problem solves itself once you stop trying to fix it. I thought back to the day 10 years ago when I'd signed that easement deal. I'd handed them security on a silver platter. They'd thanked me, then forgotten. Now I'd taken it back, and they were remembering in real time just how dependent they'd been on something they never thought could disappear. And the best part? I hadn't raised my voice, filed a lawsuit, or stepped foot on their land. All I'd done was shift a piece of paper from my name to someone else's. The rest, the rot, the empty silos, the unpaid bills, was just gravity doing its work. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a message from a friend near the farm. Your ex's father just stormed into her house screaming. Witnesses said his face was red, veins about to pop, shouting, "Do you know what he just did?" Heard it from the porch across the street. I leaned back in the cafe chair, letting the image form in my mind. Her father, that iron-willed patriarch who used to sneer at the idea that I could ever influence his world, now raging inside her home, spitting the words like a man who'd finally realized just how thoroughly he'd been played. The harvest had failed, the bank was circling, and Redline's new toll schedule had made even the smallest deliveries financially absurd. The road they once bragged about, the one that thought no one could take from them, was now the very thing choking them to end. And they couldn't touch me for it. I pulled out my phone to check my banking app. The balance blinked back at me, fatter now than it had been in years. The wire from the sale was still sitting there, untouched, a reminder that all of this had been done without raising a single hand in anger. No lawsuits, no shouting matches, just signatures, stamps, and a quiet transfer of power. In her house, I imagined the scene, her trying to explain to her father that she hadn't known, that she didn't think I'd ever pull something like this, him roaring back knowing full well that none of those excuses mattered. The land was theirs, but the lifeline was gone. Permanently. This wasn't the kind of revenge you screamed about. It was the kind you built patiently, brick by brick, until the other side realized too late that the walls were closing in. When I finally stood to leave the cafe, I left a generous tip on the table, not because I was celebrating, but because the job was done, the book was closed, and I could walk out, knowing one simple truth. They'd spend the rest of their days trying to undo what I'd done, and they never would. Silent, permanent, and completely legal.